Lived in town all my life. Been a member of the fire company here for, this is May this month, is 40 years complete.
My name's Don Scotty. I've been in town 99% of my life. I've been in the fire company for almost 60 years.
And Gary Greaves, been in the fire company for 42, 43 years, fourth generation. And my sons are fifth generation in the fire company.
The first engine. The fact is, it really wasn't an engine. It's what we call, fire apparatuses generally called engines. But that was the first piece we got was something that original charter members found in Scotch Plains. They paid $100 for it. And that, it was a horse-drawn thing. Now the interesting part too, and it also was when there was a call, they had arrangements with the neighboring people here, and they would pay that person $2. So either the horse would hook up directly to it, or they would attach it to the back of a wagon that they owned and take it to a call. We have a replica of that piece that actually sits in the North Plainfield exempt building down on Somerset Street. Gary referenced the 1949 Mack. And what's kind of cool about that is the fact that that is back here. Years ago, when the equipment was housed at what's now the Borough Hall, there used to be two bays underneath Borough Hall that faced Mountain Boulevard, and there was garages out in the back that faced the brook. And after a call one day, the 49 Mack rolled out of the garage for whatever reason, bounced up on the wall and landed on the transmission and on the chassis. And from that time on, it was no longer ours. It went up to a truck shop in Warren, who fixed it and sold it to South Plainfield. And years later, they had sold it to a collector. We got a call that this gentleman who had bought the truck from South Plainfield, which had been out of service for them for years, was looking to sell it because he came up with a piece that he thought was more valuable. So Don and I went down to Edison. We went for a ride in the truck. We said we're interested, and we came back to the firehouse. What we had previously was a 1937 Diamond T. And I found that just by accident in a junkyard down in one of the Brunswick, East Brunswick, I believe. I was there for another reason, and I saw this truck sitting down in the junkyard, and I talked to the people at the junkyard, came back here and talked to the firefighters back then, and we ended up buying that truck and restoring it with several of the members then who had a body shop and what have you, and we used that. We restored that truck, brought it and put it in parades and what have you. Well, when the 49 Mack became available, we decided that in order to fund the 49 in a matter of space as well, I contacted the East Brunswick company who had originally owned that. Again, they knew we had it, and asked if they were interested in buying their old truck back. So the price became the same price for the 49 Mack. So I want to say it was $2,500 or something like that. So we gave East Brunswick back their original truck, and we bought our original truck back.
Basically, I think they really don't know too much that we're 100% volunteer. We get up 2 o'clock in the morning to respond to calls. We get out of bed, we're going to go out for dinner or something like that. Fire call comes in, we leave our families and we come down here and go to the fire call. We're 100% volunteer.
I think the key word here is commitment, and I think that's what Gary's, of course, referring to as well. The amount of time involved, training now is hundreds of hours, and it's mandatory. It's beyond watch on fire. It's what's known as state standards and national standards, and if you don't do it, then you have insurance problems like everything else in the world. And there's training, and then there's percentages, as we talked about before, about attendance. And if you don't participate, you're not a member in good standing, and you may be gone. So there's meetings, there's training here, there's the drills here, there's training at other locations at various fire academies. And as Gary said, it's the hour of the day, and during the storms, we talk about that. People were here 60, 70 hours in a row. Did not leave this place except to go out on the rigs when it was safe. During Sandy and previously in Irene.
And then Snowtober.
Snowtober, right. And not only are the people not home taking care of their own homes and taking care of their families, they're here and also putting themselves in jeopardy. The challenge is, it depends on the calls. We've gone there and seen
You've seen everything.
some unpleasant things that you don't really want to describe. We go to accidents and fires. We have a search and rescue responsibility at times. We work with people. We have people who've gone and done water training, water rescue training, and you never know quite what that kind of call is going to be. And there's a lot of challenges in dealing with some of the stuff you see. Not everybody does well with that. It's very difficult. On a personal level, between being a policeman and being a fireman, I tell people there's not much I have not seen or experienced. And from a negative sort of thing, the bad side. But if there weren't people like us to go out and do it, where would people be? They need this security, this safety. And that's what we're about. And it's also about the fraternity here. That's the good side. That's the good side here.
Fraternity is good. I mean, we can go back and tell many stories about how we rebuilt people's houses. Paul's house and Skip Bell's house and Max's basement where we all jackhammered for 3 weekends. And there's a whole bunch of stories we can tell on that. And we all come together and help out everybody. It's a fraternity. Good times and bad times. Some of the good times is when we all get together and have a good party and just break loose a little bit. But some of the bad things that come up is when also we lose some of our upper leaders. A couple years ago we lost Jerry and Max. And these are the guys that we grew up with. These are the guys that were our mentors. And we miss them. My father, my grandfather.
In 1935, the records show there were 16 calls for the year, and there were 8 drills. And we jumped to 1964, and we went all the way up to 43 calls a year, and there were 20 drills a year at that point. And now we jump even further ahead to 2013. So last year, the record shows 278 calls. But a lot of that has to do with the storms that have gone through over the years, and things have changed. Obviously more buildings and construction in town, but also it has to do with smoke detector devices and stuff like that. We get a lot more calls. Elevator problems, accidents. As we all know, there's more people on the road and cars. So we respond to all those things. We've been to calls where they get there and say it's not a big deal, there's nothing going on. You find out there's actually a fire on the other side of the wall that people don't see. I mean, it's hard to believe that does happen. So you have to respond to every call, whether or not they tell you ahead of time that it's nothing. And you don't know. And this first was created down in the Washington House, and they decided they were going to respond to calls, got that first hand-drawn vehicle. For a short period of time, they actually used the church bell. Now this is Wilson Memorial Church, which I've grown up at, over here right by the Best Lake. They would go over, and I'm told it's a woman from the Texier family was somehow alerted, and she would go over and pull the cord and ring the bell at the church. That was how the first round of signals came in. And then shortly thereafter, after they got out, I guess it got organized over to Texier Building and out of the barn, they put up the rail, which looks like a piece of railroad track, is what it looks like, hanging in front of what's now the exempt hall. It's still over there. They would hit that with a sledgehammer, and that became the alert for quite a few years. I think in the 20s, I'm forgetting the dates now, we've looked at so many things here. I believe it was in the 20s when they got the first siren. And that's obviously replaced the gong and been utilized for years. And they first put one here on the circle, and then they added one at the east end, so there was a siren blowing on either end of town. And people hear it every day, hopefully Monday through Saturday at noon. And the intent is not necessarily to get the people home for lunch, but really to make sure that the siren does indeed work when we need it to go off. If you look at the old treasurer's book, this book is, I can say, older than me, and that the firefighters raised all their own money before the town was incorporated in the 20s. And they raised their own money to do odds and ends and buy equipment and what have you. Well, one of the things they had was a pool table. But the interesting part of this report shows from on the receipt side that at $3.51 for this particular month, which is March, and I'll find this date. And what it was you had to pay money to use the Q stick. And this was how they raised money so they could buy things, and whether or not it was beverages for a meeting or what have you. So you would pay 10 cents to use the pool stick for whatever the period of time was. And when you were done, you'd put it back, and the next person wanted to use the Q stick, they would put their dime on the table. And so the revenue for the month was $3.51 to play pool. And again, there were dues you paid, which we only stopped about 20 years ago. We're volunteering and working very many hours under a lot of unpleasant circumstances. And we're paying dues to be members here. We finally got rid of that. We each have some history here. My dad, as I mentioned before, he was the pastor over here at church, Roland Dost. He came to town in the 40s and became the minister of the church over here in the corner, and he also became a member of this fire company and went through the ranks. He's on the board over here as president at one point in time. He's not on the board, but he's on the books here as assistant chief at one point in time, under Chief Taylor, which is why we now, as several members got, including Gary's dad, honorary members, which has been at the Texture House. Some of the group here decided that they thought it was appropriate to give those people who kind of got caught behind Chief Taylor, who was chief for about 12 plus years, that the others never really got to move up to the top slot. So way down the road, they made several of these people and created these helmets, which was really, really nice. But I was drawn here through my dad and the experiences. And back in the 50s, when I was born and growing up here, there were two things in the town of Watchung. And it was basically Wilson Memorial Church, which is a non-denominational church, so everybody and anybody was there, and Watchung Fire Department. And there were so many people who were members of either or of both. Frequent thing. So many things came through this place and were held here. The fund drives down the road really consisted of an annual ball. And the members here would go out and knock on each door. We'd go in teams, we'd knock on every door in town and solicit funds. And then we would host a dance. And a lot of them were Twin Brooks Country Club. That was a fundraiser and a thing where the community got together, and it was well attended. There were lots of people there. And everybody knew everybody back then. Prior to being a member, as a youngster, there were times I was sitting on the floor of the truck because if my dad was in town and the gong sounded or the siren went off, actually at that point it would have been the siren, when I was old enough to actually be out. And if I was with my dad and he was stuck with me that day and my parents, my mom was not around or my sisters, I would go with Dad to the fire call, but I'd have to sit on the floor because it wasn't really allowed to be in the fire truck. So and I'm not the only one, I would have to sit on the floor out of sight while he went took care of the call. My dad and my mother would visit anybody who came into town. Again, back in the 40s and the 50s, that was part of his thing. You came into town, he'd knock on your door with my mom and say hello and welcome to town and this and that, and make his presence known and offer that hand out there. And Sue had told me this story that her family had shared that my folks had visited. And I think you said it was within the week, you heard the siren and the truck going down the road, and here goes this guy with his tie flapping in the breeze, and it was, isn't that the pastor? And yes, indeed, and that was my dad driving that same 49 Mac, which I enjoy driving today. But it's about being part of a small community and growing up here. It's made everything great.